Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another rules breakdown. This time we're going to be looking at this, Everyday Heroes, which came out from Evil Genius Games in 2022. Now, in my last video about this, I accidentally referred to them as Evil Genius Productions, and Dave, who was kind enough to send these copies through for review, pointed out my mistake. And I offer my heartfelt apologies. It was in his email. I should have just read what it said there. In my defense, I will point out that on the credits page, it does say Evil Genius Productions. Everyday Heroes, Core Rulebook, Copyright 2022, Evil Genius Productions. And that's where I picked it up from. I read it out of the book. I don't know why it says one thing and they're called something else, but it was in his email. I should have just read that. So I offer my apologies for that. Now, this is a 5th edition based game, as D20 Modern, which I'm a massive fan of, was based on 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons. This is an updated system to 5th edition, and a lot of rules will be very, very similar. So we shall go through these rules fairly quickly, as not too much needs to be pointed out in those areas. It's going to be the differences I'm going to be focusing on. And as usual, I'll need a sample character or NPC, and they sent through the Vault Rules Compendium as well, and I've selected out the Dystopian Soldier. Why I've chosen that character? It was just the one that caught my eye as flicking through. I was looking for a sort of human character, and that's what I found. Rather weird that I found it on page 293, and I didn't go for any of the ones earlier in the book, but that's what I found, and that's what we're using. So let's have a look at Everyday Heroes. So first up, skills, which are based on ability checks on page 208. And these are the basic 5th edition rule of roll a d20, add any bonuses against a target number. So let's have a look at some target numbers on page 209. Trivial, easy, challenging, each going up by 5, up to near impossible at 30. So in this case, we're going to take a fairly simple one, where the NPC is trying to jump over a wall. Now, this is a strength-based test, so he'll be adding his strength bonus, or if he has athletics, he'll be adding that. And we'll say it's challenging. It's quite a difficult wall for him to jump over as he's running. We'll look at the character. His strength is +2, but his athletics is +4. So we're going rolling that against a target number of 15. So we roll 1d20. We add our 4. 5 equals 9. It's well under the 15 he needs, so he fails. As simple as that. Other 5th edition things come across, so we have advantage and disadvantage. When you have advantage, you're rolling 2d20 and the player chooses the highest. If you have disadvantage, you're rolling 2d20 and you choose the lowest. And initiative, well, that's described on page 220 in the Step 3 initiative section in the combat area. And it's a dexterity check made with no proficiency bonus or other modifiers. But you're adding your dexterity bonus. So we look at the character. His dexterity bonus is +3. We roll a d20. And we add 3. He gets a 1. Very low roll. So he goes in 4. And that's it. Now he goes after people in 5 or higher. He goes before people in 3 or lower. He gets to do a number of different things in each combat round. It is described here in combat turns. During a turn, combatant can do the following things: move up to their speed, take 1 action, take 1 bonus action, perform 3 actions, use your reaction. They can do all of those in whichever order they want. And so on to combat. Well, combat works the same way that it does in 5th edition. You're rolling a d20, you're adding any bonuses you get, and you're going against target's defense value. And if you exceed that, you hit. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that armor works differently in Everyday Heroes. It doesn't add to your defense value. It doesn't, you put on a set of plate mail, you don't become harder to hit. It counts up later in the damage section, and we'll come to that in the fullness of time. Also, we've got critical hits. If you roll a 20, you automatically hit, and you do bonus damage. And if you roll a 1, it's a critical miss, and it has the following effects. Any attack automatically misses. A weapon with a returning value property does not return. Firearms with the unreliable property become jammed. Ranged attacks into melee combat can hit an ally. See ranged attacks into close combat below. So let's have a sample one. So this character is going to be shooting it himself. He has an assault carbine, which he gets a +5 to hit. So we're going rolling a d20 plus 5, and his defense value is 15. So we throw a d20, roll a 15. He gets a 5 on top of that, so he gets a 20. So he clearly hits. And it's as simple as that. And so damage. Well, damage is like 5th edition, that you're going to be rolling some dice based on what weapon you're using. We'll come to that in a second. First of all, you get bonus based on your attributes. So you add your strength modifier for melee attacks to the damage, your dexterity modifier for ranged attacks, strength or dexterity for melee attacks using weapons with finesse, strength or dexterity for ranged attacks using weapons with finesse and thrown, and no ability modifier applies to attacks with explosives. Over the page, we can see critical hits. And in that case, when you roll a 20, you get a critical hit, your damage dice is doubled. So if you're going to be rolling 1d6 for your weapon, you'll now be rolling 2d6. But let's have a look at the example here before we go on to armor. So this character has a assault carbine, which does 1d12 plus 3 damage. So 1d12, roll it. We get a 5 plus 3, so he's done 8 points of damage. Now, armor comes into this on page 140. It's very, very far back. There we go. Armor, you compare it only counts, first of all, when you're getting reduced down to 0 hit points. So we've rolled 5 damage. If you're at 5 hit points, then that'll take you down to 0. Your armor then comes into play. It's only then. First of all, you compare the armor value to the penetration value of the weapon. So in this case, his assault carbine has a penetration value of 3, and his ballistic vest has an armor value of 3. Now, if the penetration value of the weapon was higher, it would just go through the armor. The armor would not take effect at all. In this case, though, they're equal, so it works. Now we have to make an armor saving throw. DC is 10, or half the damage from the attack, rounded down, whichever is higher. So in this case, we've done 5 points of damage. If we'd done 15 points of damage, the target number would be 15. But in this case, because it's lower than 10, we're just taking the 10. So we're making a save. We've rolled a natural 20, so we've made that. It's also worth bearing in mind that the ballistic vest has a +2, so that's actually a 22. Now, in this case, the armor's taken effect. He's taken no damage from that attack. The armor has saved him, although the armor now has taken damage itself. And health. Well, health is kind of dealt with hit points, like standard 5th edition, but we go into details on page 234 on taking damage. What it means to lose hit points, you're just losing hit points. It has no effect beyond that. You don't become a worse character because you're more damaged. When you're reduced to 0, you go down to the ground and you start your death saving throws, which work exactly the same way in 3rd edition. If you succeed the test, then you get 1 save. You need 3 to stabilize, unless you roll a natural 20, in which case you instantly stabilize and are restored to 1 hit point. If you take damage, then any damage you take is counted as 1 failed save, so you can be taken 2 failed saves and killed while you're down on the ground. We also have restoring hit points, so we're using short rests and long rests, which work exactly the same way as 5th edition. And so advancement, which is a bit different from 5th edition, because there are no experience points, and also there are only 10 levels. There aren't 20 levels in this. Advancement is done through milestones, so when your character achieves a certain goal, completing an adventure, doing something heroic, the Games Master will decide that you are leveling up. And it's all the usual things. You're getting talents from your archetype and class, you're getting defense bonus advancement, proficiency bonus advancement, extra hit dice, extra hit points, and you can decide to multi-class into something else. So instead of going up to 2nd level, you become 1st level in 2 things. But there's still only going to be 10 levels total. Now, one of the things I was very impressed with in D20 Modern was how it handled wealth. You had a wealth value rather than bothering to calculate out how many dollars exactly you were carrying around. And that wealth value was used as a skill to test. So you would have a target number, you roll your d20, you'd add your wealth level. And if you exceeded the value of the item, you'd buy it. Which I thought worked great, because it meant that somebody who had immense wealth, if they made a bad roll, wouldn't be able to buy something. And that would simulate, you've got enough money in your bank account to buy a new yacht, but you've left your wallet at home, so you can't buy this relatively cheap thing. And likewise, somebody who's very, very poor could make a very good roll and be able to buy something very valuable. I liked that a lot. It emulated the system pretty well. Also, it did wonderful factor that as you went up levels, you gained wealth, but as you bought expensive items over your wealth, I believe it was a standard 15. If anything was 15 or over, you automatically lost one wealth level, because you're buying something which is extending your resources. You're running out of money. So characters wouldn't be able to get infinite stuff. Well, that's kind of gone in Everyday Heroes. You have a wealth value, and everything has an amount of wealth that you need to have to buy it. But in this case, if its value is less than your wealth value, you can pretty much automatically have it. And if it's more than that, then you'll have to role-play it out with the games master how you're going to raise the money to buy that item. So it does take things into role-playing, which is always good, but I really like the rules for that system from D20 Modern, and I'm afraid that's gone now. So that's Everyday Heroes. The rules are very compatible with 5th edition. There's some differences in there, the way armor works, for example, that you're making a saving throw to avoid the last damage, which will take you down, rather than it constantly making you harder to hit. So an interesting change. I don't like the way the wealth system's changed. And when I was flicking through the rules, I came across this dice steps. That's one of the things I was looking forward to seeing how it worked. Basically, oil dice can go up or down. So if your weapon is doing a d6 damage, it can be escalated to a d8, a d10, d12. Or likewise, it can be shrunk down. But I found very few occasions of things taking advantage of this. The martial artist and the MMA Fighter character class both have abilities which take their base melee damage, so just hitting with their fist or hands, from a d4 to a d6 at first level, and then later on they get escalated again, so they'll be going from d6 to a d8 with their hands or weapons. But for putting this rule in, I didn't find many occasions. In fact, I didn't find any occasions of it decreasing. I imagine there are. I just didn't notice any because I didn't read through all 460 pages of the rules. I was just picking and choosing what I found. So I thought that was going to be more interesting, and it turns out to be a very specific rule for very specific classes. But anyway, as usual, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough. So thank you very much for watching. As always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.